I've seen, like I said, thousands of people on the stand, and I really do not believe that George had anything to do with this cover-up or anything like that. I think probably a couple weeks into it, once she started telling these ridiculous stories, these nutty stories, obviously then, Cindy's mother instinct kicked in, and she's like, I know my kid's lying, and George's detective instinct kicked in, and I think they probably knew she had done something, whether it was intentional, accidental, whatever, but at that point they couldn't bring themselves to admit it. So I don't really, in looking at the two of them and watching them testify, I don't think that Cindy and George had anything to do with the death or the cover-up of the death, but I think they probably came to the realization, like I said, pretty quick into the investigation of what happened, but they just could not bring themselves to admit it.
Right. Well, that's definitely a possibility, and I wish that, maybe Casey will get enough treatment like they've talked about. I'm glad that she wants it. I hope that she can, get it under the circumstances she's facing, and, hopefully at some time in the future she'll feel like she can start to sort that out and tell her story. Not for, and I think a lot of people who say they aren't going to buy her story or read it or whatever will, but because everybody wants the answers. But, I don't know. To me, the truth is the only way she's ever going to get out from underneath being hunted down like bin Laden. Once the truth comes out, that's it.
I don't foresee her ever telling the truth, though. But you're right. People will buy it. Even those people who say, I'm boycotting they'll be ordering on the Internet and having it delivered in a brown paper bag. I mean, come on, because everybody wants to know. But what I said from the very beginning, before this trial even started, I blog for Women in Crime, Inc., and I said, you know what, y'all? You need to beware. Remember the saying that a trial is a search for the truth.
Yes, I like that.
You're going to find it. That does not mean you're going to find it. At the end of the trial, you will still be left with questions, and probably more questions than you had going in. It's a search for the truth, but the truth is not always revealed. And so if you, put so much into this, you're going to be disappointed, and you're going to feel cheated at the end of the trial. And when I used to prosecute murder cases, I told my victims' families that all the time. I said, look, y'all, I can get you some measure of justice, but I cannot get you all the answers you want because, there are certain things that only the defendant knows, and he's not talking or she's not talking. So, we all need to beware that, hey, it's a search for the truth, and we may never know it. And quite frankly, everybody needs to let go and move on. I mean, there's millions of missing children. There's hundreds of thousands of murder cases out there. It's very sad to say, but, people kill people they love all the time. People kill their children every day.
We just had this whole thing with Warren Jeffs. I live in Texas, and, I mean, this guy clearly, with evidence, has been shown to do horrible atrocities to a numbered amount of children, yada, yada, yada. And, it's just, I don't know, from out here looking in, I see a disproportionate amount of, I don't want to see any hate at all, first of all. I wish people would be more responsible with their passions and let them filter out without so much hate, because really all it does is just cause up a bunch of fighting and drama, and nothing really matters at the end of the day anyway. Nothing got done. But, I just wish that there was a more proportionate disbursement of the passions, because you've got this girl over here who did this to her child, and it's horrible, and, we all know that, and we all have certain feelings about Kaylee. She's precious, and it was so bad what happened to her. And I don't want to discount that at all. It's just, whoa, from my perspective on the outside looking in, I see total disparity with what people are focusing on. And like you said, I wish they would just let it go and let the passions that have come out in them, so they could stand around and look and say, okay, wait, this has really got me upset. What can I learn from this? What can I do? I'm feeling fired up, and I know I can do something with this passion. And, a lot of groups have been started, even in the haters was what they're called. They're very organized, and they could take all their passions and they could do some amazing things with it. That's
right.
what I
That's
like
exactly right.
Happen.
You need to channel all of that rage into passion for positive. You know, you can absolutely effectuate change. I mean, you know, you're on Facebook as well as I am, and how many times, Carrie, every single day do we see postings from a mother, my son is missing, my child is missing, my little girl is missing. I mean, there are so many missing people organizations out there who need volunteers, who need help with mailers.
That's exactly
and
right. I can't even get any time on my show right now for missing children, and I've been trying for 3 weeks because this and some of the other story. I mean, you're so right. It's so disproportionate, and I'm really hoping that we can get that word out there. Please take your rage. Let's focus it and channel it and educate and motivate, because we could do some great things with this passion right now all together. It's amazing.
Right. That's exactly right. You know, if you are this upset that there was no justice for this child, then go to an organization that is working for justice for other children and volunteer your time.
Yes.
You know, get on the net and put out postings for them, because what you're doing is completely non-productive if you're being hateful about it. Because let's face it, you're never going to get your hands on her. I mean, I don't like it any more than they do. I think she was guilty of sin, and I think she was guilty of first-degree murder. But here's the deal. At the end of the day, the only people's opinion that mattered were the 12 in the box. And they spoke. And we don't have to like it.
No, and they have the right as Americans and as people that were told to do this. They have the right to all follow what they see as the right thing to do themselves.
Well,
and they live here, too. They should...
Right, but bear in mind, both sides picked that jury. Both sides agreed on that jury. You know what I mean?
They sure did. Yes, they did.
You know, I mean, it's not like the defense just went in there and said, hey, I want those 12, and the state didn't get a say. I mean, you know, they both picked that jury. And so if the jury didn't come out with the result you wanted, you know, well, moving on. I mean, there's 1,000 other cases sitting on my desk that need attention. So, you know, you need to let it go. And, you know, if you want her to get some measure of justice, then just start praying about it.
I know. And like you said, the Kaylee law that's come up, again, you're looking at something that everybody can agree on. And if everybody could just agree to disagree and then set that aside, okay, we all disagree about this, so we're setting it aside because it's not going anywhere. It's just causing hate and violence and problems. And we're going to focus over here on what we agree on, which, for example, right now is Kaylee's law and all the other different issues that we can see perking their head up through here, because we can take this treasure and make a travesty and make a treasure out of it if we choose to. And it doesn't matter which side of the fence you're on this issue, and that's the reason why I started Truth Finders for Justice, because I felt like, you know, everybody should quit complaining about it and actually do something. And let's not try to change something we can't fix, as opposed to looking and changing things that we can. And let's get rid of the hate.
Absolutely. Well,
so
you know,
it's
the same principle as don't complain about your politicians if you didn't vote.
See, that's,
you know,
you're going to hear me saying that a lot. I say that. Apathy.
You know, if you don't like the way the system is operating, well, okay, do something about it. But do it in a positive way that's going to effectuate change, as opposed to foster more problems with the system. Because here's the deal. If somebody does do something to Casey, God forbid, then they're facing criminal charges. And here we go again. I mean, what's the point in that? It's cyclical. You know, it's just stupid. You know,
it really is.
You know, let it go and find a positive way for your energy to be output and change the world, but change it, you know, for the good, for the better. You know, like I said, there's
you were saying, you were talking about a lot of the victims that you've prosecuted for, and they, you know, the different things that come up in the lives that they need. I'm seeing this a lot as I'm investigating the whole Warren Jeffs polygamy situation. I'm finding all these victims and all the things that they need. Because once you have that victim and then, you know, the trial is over, because before that there's so much attention focused on achieving the goals of that trial. And a lot of times, and unfortunately during that trial, they're going through traumas, those victims, because they're having to testify and listen and go through it. And afterwards, you know, now you've exposed everything, like you said, it's a search for the truth. So then afterwards, you've got all this truth, and it's a good time. to take that truth and look at it, and because we can't survive without mistakes. Mistakes is how we learn and grow. We can't hide our mistakes. We have to look at them and learn from them. So I really wish that we can, and I hope, and I'll be working towards getting people to maybe take a look at that. I think that you can't argue with the fact that it's the good things that, you know, are worth putting the time and effort into. So I guess we'll see what happens.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, Holly, you are awesome for calling in, and I am so glad we got to talk about it. Finally, you know, a discussion about the facts and the topics, and I think that's really critical, and I know all the listeners will appreciate that. I know I do.
Absolutely. My pleasure.